And my goal, as you say, now is to in some way share with people, not only to be aware of your intuition, but how do you actually use it correctly? You can impact people, you can impact, they call it the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry to say, I think that's misunderstood
Yeah.
because actually there's seven principles that you have to follow to achieve certain things.
Yeah.
So I hope I can share that in some way with the younger people.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you are watching or listening. This is the Holistic Monitor, and I'm your host, Nick Sconia. The Holistic Monitor podcast is a weekly show featuring guest interviews with discussions about self-discovery, philosophy, spirituality, and our relationship with the world around us. Your support this last year has meant the world to me, and you can now go to holisticmonitor.com to support the topics you want to hear with our new show merchandise, featuring hats, t-shirts, hoodies, and more. You can also support us by simply sharing your favorite episode with your followers. And with that, let's get the show started. June Ahern, you are an author, established author, I'd say.
Yes.
And you have been working as an intuitive, a psychic, right? And you've been training others to do the same. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. I really love to do that.
Now, isn't it something about helping somebody else find latent talent within themselves? There's
Absolutely.
something to that. Now, you got your start a while back due to, was it a near-death experience?
I had a near-death experience in 1970.
Okay. Could you tell me about that, what that entailed?
Well, I was in an automobile accident. We went right head into a utility pole. I didn't know the guy that I was out with on a date. He had taken some drugs and I didn't even know. And he fell asleep and right into a utility pole in the middle of a parking lot where nobody else was. It was down at Stanford in California, Northern California, in the Stanford, University place late at night. It was about midnight, and we went right into it. And I went through the windshield, came back in, and evidently, according to later in the hospital, they said I expired in the ambulance just for seconds, 20, 15, 30 seconds, very short period of time. It was difficult for many years to say to people, I think I went to heaven. I wasn't necessarily in that place at a young age to be going to heaven. I was a child of the 60s in San Francisco.
Right.
And I was told to go back. As I say, I was rejected at the pearly gates and came back. I had no idea that I would be involved with the psychic world the way I became from that near-death experience.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't know at that point in time. Now, did it take a little while for things to start developing for yourself, or was it just a wash over you of this new talent?
Yeah, it took a while. I started having what I considered deja vus. I would think I would see somebody, or I would hear somebody say something they hadn't said, but a short time later they would say it. And yes, so the first part was that I was so physically in need to recover. I was very injured. And that took up a big space of time. Wasn't even back then you did not talk about a near-death experience, and I went to the other side. And I came from a very religious family.
Okay.
So you definitely didn't talk about it.
Right.
And not until my father gave me, kind of toward the end of the 1970s, my father gave me a book, Dr. Raymond Moody, Life After Life. And I was able to say, I had this experience and I went to the other side and it was beautiful and it was actually blissful. I wanted to stay there. I didn't want to come back. It was so beautiful. And then by then, though, I had already become involved in the tarot cards and I was starting to do readings. And it was very unusual because I didn't understand where it came from. I didn't have enough education. And that's why I decided when I became professionally involved with giving readings that I wanted to find out if there were other people like me that I could in some way encourage. And one thing is support them and say, yes, I get it. Now there are many people that are aware of their intuition.
Right.
I see it all the time. I'm an empath. I have intuitive feelings. And I think that that's wonderful because I think we're going to need it as the world goes on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like it's a perfect timing.
Absolutely.
I like to say it's like it was planned. It was like, this is a
Yeah,
setup.
the evolution. And
Yeah.
if we are able to be more empathetic, not
Right.
only to the humans, but we see that with a greater awareness of how to treat animals.
Mm-hmm.
People
Right.
are much more conscious because we hear a lot of negative responses from people. There's a lot of fear going around, and if someone sits back and listens to their intuition, they'll have a greater impact on the world than they realize by just even using their own intuition to visualize a better place
Right.
and to evolve.
Yeah. And now, would you say that that is your main goal right now, is to help people find their intuition?
Absolutely. I just did a class on using to do it as divination or reading for other people what's going to happen in the future. I mean, it certainly can be used for that. I used it for
Yeah.
many years in my profession and was very successful. I'm retired from giving private readings now. And my goal, as you say, now is to in some way share with people, not only to be aware of your intuition, but how do you actually use it correctly? You can impact people, you can impact, they call it the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry to say, I think that's misunderstood
Yeah.
because actually there's 7 principles that you have to follow to achieve certain things.
Yeah.
So I hope I can share that in some way with the younger people.
Yeah. I think what we're finding is that there's just so much information out there that what we're seeing is almost a flood that it kind of waters down the information that could be very useful. People kind
Absolutely.
of go from rung 1 to rung 7 and don't really think about the need for rung 2 to 5, 2 to 6 to get to 7. Jumping all around and not really gaining, some basic principles of what develops the skill and what keeps the skill strong. And kind of like you said, the 7 principles, there's these other aspects that make sure that you're doing right in accordance with other laws that are out there.
Absolutely. You put it very well. I think that's a really good way of what you just said. Go from rung one, people say, oh, I'm really intuitive. And unfortunately, I see more and more people that say they are readers for other
Right.
people without going through the process
Yeah.
of, first of all, a reader should be completely ready for a reading through meditation, purifying their own thoughts and making a there's a whole process to it that I see is missing.
Yeah. Well, what I notice on that line, and something that gets me a lot, that I see it all the time, and when I was somewhat taught by somebody to read cards, I don't read cards. I only read them for myself,
Right.
more on
That's good.
self-exploration. But respect was one of the biggest things, and how you approach anything of that sort, how you approach any means of divination, means of exploration, was to approach it as you would something that was very dangerous and yet very sacred and special. You'd give it a lot of credit and respect, and if you didn't, it would give you exactly back what you gave it. So if you laughed at it, it would laugh at you, that kind of idea. um, and I see a lot of people that just kind of toy around with cards, just flipping them around. It's not my place to say anything about that. That's their journey and their way. But the way I was taught was to be give it utmost care and respect, and as a sacrament almost.
That's so well put. That's what I was talking in the class. I hear people say, well, I read the cards intuitively. Reading the tarot is an art and a science. You have to understand the science. Symbolic. Why is that used? Why is that color used? What is it doing to provoke a greater connection to your intuitive mind? And I know that when I've spoken with some people, they don't necessarily always agree. They say, well, I know how to do this intuitively, and I've kind of tested them. I have a different thought about that because I have been studying, well, for 50 years now.
Yeah.
I was studying. I'm reading the Kabbalah and the major arcana and the tarot, and I'm still studying. Every day I'm picking up and studying.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much to what would be even the Rider-Waite deck, which, is a hallmark of that time period, but it brings up so much symbological representation in each card. Just the color usage alone has import, especially if you match it to the letters in the Hebrew alphabet.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially that.
Yeah. I mean, they match. It matches. So it's like, well, why not?
Yeah, because as you said, it's as a sacrament. That was very well put. I had not used that, and I will use that as we prepare for any kind of sacred ritual.
Yeah.
People go through cleansing themselves. It's the same with spells. And, I've used spells, affirmations. I would rather use an affirmation, and I meditate every day and do the whole process of how do I want to live.
Mm-hmm.
People ask me for a spell. And I said, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to do it? What is your thought? What's your intention here?
Intention,
I
right.
don't realize how much there's involved preparing for weeks, even before preparing to do this spell.
Yeah. Well, we could also, in life, this is how you could do it. If you're really into the cards, you could say, look at the magician, look at how his table is set. Everything is perfect, and his attention, his focus is perfect on the implements on the table. Everything is ready. The will is ready to be manifest. And in life, that's something that we would need to do as well, is just really prepare the groundwork. And with intuition, are you seeing that there is an ABC to help people develop the intuition and
Absolutely.
to kind of read themselves in a sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could get to the point, and I used to teach ESP development classes, and you can look at your own aura. You can look at what energy you're putting out. I mean, that's what the aura is, and that's why it can change daily or even throughout the one day.
Yeah.
And teaching people to say, do you want to change your aura? You would think, I would do a particular aura exercise where I would attract, what did I want to attract? So I would put a color around myself. And I was with a friend one day, and she said, everybody's looking at you. Even this, we go to a restaurant, she goes, well, I feel like I'm just nobody here. People are coming up or they're talking to you. And I said, well, I kind of set that attention for the day. I like to play around and exercise with it and see how it works. When you recognize your intuition is working, people say, is it just a one-time thing? Like, oh, I had an insight once. You can have it more often if you know how to do it. And you want to be able to first acknowledge it, like it did take place. It happened. And when did it happen? Why did it happen? Where were you in your frame of mind and your emotions when it took place? Unfortunately, I get too many people saying to me, oh, I can always tell when something bad's going to happen. I said, well, you can do that with good too.
Right. Goes both ways.
So there is a process, and what I do, and I used to love to do, is in my class, is that we play games. Sit with this person, and I would have students where they blindfold them, even put earplugs in so that they were away from the external world.
Yeah.
And I said, just go ahead and feel. What are you feeling? So playing games is a really good way. Having a friend walk with you in nature where you are blindfolded and lead you around and use all your senses.
Right. And it also builds trust with that person.
Absolutely.
That's another type of practice where you work with somebody head to head. And you kind of work to expand both intuitions for both people by learning first the physical cues and then the expectation, and then you get further away from them, and it kind of separated from time or space, and still try to maintain a linkage to again harness that intuition or that ability, that psychic ability.
Yeah, they talk about when a person becomes a new mother,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
they talk about mother's intuition.
Right.
Even if you are feeling something is different than what someone else is telling you. That's why they say mothers should always follow her intuition. And that's because it's a connection with you and another being, another living being.
Yeah.
So it's how does your intuition work? How it may work for Nick, maybe not how it works for June. I happen to be very clairvoyant. I
Mm-hmm.
clearly see. Perhaps that you are clairaudio. You
Right.
hear messages.
Yeah.
And so I have a little test that's in two of my books, and it's a intuitive ESP test, and it goes through a list of this. How do you find out uh, what your particular ability is
Mm.
intuitive? Is it clairvoyancy? Is it clairaudio? Is it clairsentient? How do you pick up information? And everybody does it in their own way.
Right. Yeah. Or multiple ways,
I was going to
depending on.
say, after many
Yeah.
years, I don't even need the cards at all. I could just I read people's auras.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see that.
Now, how would that be different for somebody that says they read intuitively the cards versus reading somebody's aura, which would kind of almost be the same um, basis, reading somebody intuitively?
Well, if you were to, and we use the cards, the tarot cards, when you read the cards intuitively, you're not, the intuition includes our own experiences.
So it's
The
colored.
psychic mind is it once removes you,
Right.
meaning that when you are using the highly developed psychic mind, you are not connecting to the person. So, for instance, I had to self-train myself a lot. That I would look for particular teachers to learn from, books and like that. There were times in a reading where I worked with people that, I also do mediumship work. Where I work with the police on murder cases and all of those things. And I would become overly involved intuitively.
Mm.
I would
Ah,
become emotionally.
right.
And then somewhere, some of my own life experiences would get mixed in. So that's the thing about intuition, is that you will mix in your own experiences. Say you and I go for a walk and it's dark out, and you've never had anything negative happen on this dark night as we're walking down this alleyway. You're like, yeah, I don't believe in that. But I had a really bad experience. So I enter, and intuitively I start saying, I think something really is not good here. I think
Mm-hmm.
something's going to happen. And I'm all nervous, but you're saying, I walk down this alleyway, nothing's happened. Well, suddenly somebody throws garbage out and it falls on my head. So intuitively I knew something bad was going to happen, but
Right.
my fear level was so high that I was attracting something to me.
Yeah.
So
It
that's the
found
thing.
the water seeking its level. That experience, the potential or the possible occurred, and it occurred to the person that was kind of beaconing out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have to gauge. As a reader, you really should not be intuitively involved with the person on those kind of levels. And I even said in my class this weekend that just passed, I said that I didn't think that empaths should be really doing readings,
Yeah.
because
Because it's
they're
too
going to check
much.
in everybody's stuff. Yeah, it's
Right.
too much. I've seen readers fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah, and that works with a lot of different things, and that there has to be a strong practice. When I say it's very important to ground, because you're working in an electromagnetic fields. You need to ground out, just like any electrical pulse. You need to find a way to ground and not associate yourself with what you're doing as much as possible. So a
As much as
wall,
possible.
whatever it would be. And that is an issue, and I think that's something that needs to be taught as well. Is that something that you do as well?
Yeah,
teach
I go through
protective?
the whole part of it. Before we start, I really encourage that reflective time. If you don't want to, if people tell me I can't meditate, I can't meditate. Well, guess what? Almost nobody can
Yeah,
get to that
right.
place really easy. So I introduce different ways to at least be reflective and clean your own mental vision and be open, but take a step back. So where you're more watching it or hearing from a distance than being involved. I do, as you know, I sent you my bio that I do paranormal investigations.
Hmm.
Fun. It's my entertainment. Now that I'm not doing readings, I got to use my psychic energy in some way.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and I've said I don't want to be involved in negative spaces
right.
where there have been a lot of sadness. Like I was asked to do the zodiac
Mm,
place, and I said no,
wow. Yeah.
no, I don't want to go there. Why go there?
Yeah. Well, do you find that greater association with consciousness at large um, increases the a magnification of negativity within a space based on previous occurrences? So if everybody knows about a murder that happened in a house in this area or in the world, let's just say it was world news, this house has got a mark on it. Does that seem to magnify or increase, or is it not? Is it negligible?
No, definitely magnify. And when we use our intuition and know how to use it, we can absolutely make a greater buffer between us and what's being sent to us.
Mm,
They call that the astral plane. When you go to sleep, you go into this different dimensional space where you have access to information, but that information isn't always pure. It isn't
right,
always positive.
right.
You're bumping into negativity here and there.
Yeah,
Uh, and a person that works on their intuitive self in a proper way, aligns themselves, is able to be reflective or meditate, hopefully daily. Take 5 is what I tell people. Just
take
take
five.
5. And because people are living off fear right now, they
Yeah,
don't realize that even in their dream state, they have entered into other people's fears. We could just look at the world, and I just refuse to enter into that fear. I get it. And on days I feel it.
yeah,
And I think, boy, I got to separate myself. People ask me intuitively, what do you think? Are we going to blow ourselves up? I go,
maybe,
maybe,
maybe. You know,
maybe,
yeah, yeah. That's what you have to do because
but
there is so much.
yeah, and we can influence other people.
Right.
That's the wonderful part about developing your intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Gotta be
I
careful.
found
Yeah.
that something that I learned a long while back was that I needed to be careful what information I gave to other people. If I had attained some kind of special metaphysical information that was for me very valuable and instructive, it may possibly be destructive for somebody else that again didn't climb the same rung of ladder steps that I did. In partaking ideas of the dark stuff and in finding out about those things about yourself, there are lessons gleaned that are really for yourself and not necessarily something that needs to be shared. Unless that person's going through it, in which case maybe to support them with that kind of assistance. But it's the be careful who you cast your pearls at, or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And if you I'll give it for me to read an aura, this is what I would teach my students. It gives you a greater ability to know how to communicate with that person.
mhm,
If you're reading somebody with an extremely hot aura and it's just going everywhere, you're not going to go charging in and become that aura and meet it
right.
so that you match it. You want to step back and perhaps send some sort of blue energy to them,
Hmm,
cool them out, make it easier, choose your words differently.
right.
Uh, Not to read other people only, but how do you interact with people when you read them?
Right. Do you think this is something that is innate with people, even if they don't realize it, like journalists potentially, or people that are trying to do collaboration, coordination, people in that kind of realm of working with other people to try and make a win-win, that kind of thing? Is this
Well,
something
even,
that they're probably already doing?
even a detective, or they will talk about, yeah, I kind of get a gut feeling about this person.
Right.
And actually, from the scientific point of view, they're realizing that actually between the gut and the brain, the hippocampus, that there actually is a link.
Yeah.
It does actually go up. And I love the studies they're doing on the brain now. As I say, they're
Yeah.
finally catching up with metaphysics.
Yeah. Isn't that something too? It's there's been this known thing from ancient times almost on how things work.
Yeah.
And now that we're able to really magnify in and study these things almost with the function of that the dark energy or whatever, that in between force, there's just this realization that there is a connection between these atoms and those atoms that are very related, and
I see you
especially when
know
you put
what
attention
you're
on it.
talking about.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Really know
wild,
what
isn't
you're
it?
talking about.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat that we're getting to see so much of this become um, worldwide reality. But again, here it is, a tidbit of information for people that are only just arriving, and they're getting the seventh rung, and they don't really understand how that can be brought up, utilized personally,
And
uh,
it's scaring people at times.
and it can be very scary. Yeah.
Because of what work I've done, I hear from people, they PM me, they do all kinds of stuff. They get in touch with me, I have a lot of people asking me exactly what you're talking about.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, I just feel I'm so connected. I hear all these voices, or I see all this thing.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just say, okay, let's take it one at a time. Let's just calm down here. And what do you want to take in? You don't have to take all of this in.
Right.
You can set up your own boundaries, safe boundaries, and make that distance between you and the information. Do you want to be a part of it, or you don't want to be a part of it? And as you
Yeah.
say, well, sharing it, you put it very well. The atoms, I wasn't going to get into all of that, but I see you know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
well, that's like now that's common knowledge. I mean, that's like we feel like we're going deep, but really that's the scale that people are really at now. They kind of get from a scientific perspective.
Yeah,
For
it should be
me,
that.
yeah, it should be. And for me, for a very long time, I would tell people it has to make some kind of sense to me, or else I don't know to believe in it. But if I can rationalize some kind of method that the metaphysical will work, then it makes more sense to me. So people talk about stones and their energies and say, well, they're showing you their color. And so you match that to the speed in your chakras, what that color would be. And that gives you a really simple basis as to like how to use that stone. Just match it to your chakra, figure out what that energy is. And then you go deeper and you could say, is that chakra not spinning for you? Is that, the energy of that chakra, is it off? And so maybe you're drawn to green because your heart chakra is off. And so you adjust, you're being called towards that color or that stone or whatever it might be. See, to me, that makes scientific sense in my brain, rational sense. Like, oh, okay, I'm just associating vibration with one thing to another, and like a tuning fork, I'm trying to get them to vibe together to balance them out.
And you should always experiment on your own. And that was
Right.
something. When people would come for readings, what I would say to them is, I didn't want people hanging on. That's why I
Mm,
refused to see people too often. If you came for reading, wait a year. You got it recorded. Look at
right.
it.
Right.
Uh, I didn't want repeats. It didn't make
Yeah.
sense to me to bring. Most people don't want to work on themselves. They want to wait and see what's going to happen. But when you connect with another intuitively, like a reader, or as you're speaking, even speaking with you that you've done your studies, there's a greater understanding that's not only taking place between us,
Hmm.
and like your show is doing, then you begin to affect other people just by being in that frame of mind.
Right. Right.
We can think of the Dalai Lama. I've had people that have been up close meeting him, and they say, you don't have to do anything. You just stand there and you can feel
Right.
his.
Yeah, and that's the old ancient, again, going back into, thousands of years, that's the concept of the guru, is that the guru has touched infinity, has touched some aspect or deity that is out of the third dimension. And just to be near somebody that is quote unquote touched will imbue you with that same kind of energy. And then maybe that's why you wrote the books, so that you could kind of separate yourself from that for other people and say, here you go, here's your tool, here's your workbook, here's your way. And that kind of allows you the wall or the space from that empathetic energy back and forth.
Yeah, if you want it, it's there. I like to keep I wanted when I wrote to keep my what I was sharing real easy, like everyday language. Because I've
Yeah.
read, God, I've got in front of me shelves of books.
Yeah.
And I think that we want to keep it easier for
Right.
people to understand. I certainly know I had to, as I studied, of course, it would be like in any grade. I could read books that use words that I go, oh, I know those words. Whereas maybe a couple of years ago, I didn't know those words.
Right.
And so keep it
Leveling up.
real, because we all have some part of intuition. It may be different for some than others. I don't care to have people dependent on me.
Mm-hmm.
Might be just my way of life. I like to be kind of a free bird, you know.
Yeah.
So I'd rather teach somebody than have somebody keep coming to me.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Now, are you doing teaching online kind of in this format?
I do different online Zoom once in a while. I was doing them very regularly for a while. I took a break, and now we can do some things in person. So I
Mm.
do a little bit of that. You know, the nice thing about being mostly retired is you do whatever you want when you want.
Yeah. Be
Yeah,
wherever you want to be. Yeah.
yeah.
Very
Like
good.
I don't think I'll do that today.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I really am living my life to be in service.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I look at my life. I'm in service. I
Yeah.
belong to a particular study. It's called the Rosicrucians, and
Mm-hmm.
one of our things is to be in service in some way to help any one person or animal or whatever have a better place, a
Yeah.
better life. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always thought of the Rosicrucians kind of on that, kind of like spiritual Shriners, where Shriners do this give back to the kids through the hospitals and all that. The Rosicrucians kind of have this resource of knowledge, and they, put it out to the world at
Yeah, and
times.
the same thing with that. Someone asked, "Oh, if I join the Rosicrucians, do you have initiations?" And I said, "We have degrees. You
Right.
start out with the neophyte, first degree, second degree. You know, we have degrees. You learn in a pace,
Yeah.
and the more you get involved with that, the more you are actually involved with yourself.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They're a metaphysical, scientific study, not
Yeah.
any religion whatsoever. You can do whatever you want, religious wise, and that's what I like too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a path of
Coming
the
from a
self.
very religious background, I prefer not to align myself to any one religion.
Right. Right. And that's great. And then also opens you up to be a better vessel for the intuition, because it's not coloring your perspective or perception. Um,
And
and
intuition, you can use it even to improve your own health. Everything, you can
yeah,
use it to improve so much in your life when you
yeah.
tap into it, the resource.
Now you're finding a lot more people um, are feeling naturally intuitive.
Yes,
And do you subscribe to the idea that that is based on the revolutions in the heavens, as in like an age of Aquarius, a change of kind of our focus?
absolutely. We're becoming, and just the example of using technology, we could talk to somebody anytime we want in any country.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, used to be, I remember when you called long distance, we would call back. You know, my family came here when I was 6 to this country.
Mm.
So we'd make these calls, you know, on the phone, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
How you finding your lover? And everybody had to get on the phone. But now we can call people anywhere. So on the physical level, mental level, we're much
Right.
more conscious of us being part of a world.
Yeah.
And that includes the expansion of the psychic mind, of the intuitive mind. We're opening up all over.
It does seem to be that way. There's a lot of
Yeah.
resistance, but there's definitely the
Pull us back.
reality. Yeah.
When science took hold in, like, say, the 14th century in Italy, the Catholic Church tried to keep scientists from coming out and saying, Galileo and coming out and talking about, well, the world isn't flat,
Right.
and the world is round. And so there's always going to be a pullback. And I don't mean to, I'm not in negative way speaking about that particular religion. I'm just saying that when
Right.
we start to go forward, there is going to be a pullback to control us.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening now. We're being controlled all over.
Yeah. Yeah. It's trying to hold back the
Not
flow.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Time
Yeah.
keeps marching on, as they say. Yeah.
Think for yourself.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
And that goes back to
is
the
the world in a very difficult place? Yeah, we're evolving. It's like childbirth. When you're
yeah.
coming through the canal is the most dangerous time of being born, not just even coming through that one. And that's what we're at. We're in a canal.
Yeah.
Evolve.
Yeah. It's all about that evolution for sure.
Yeah.
Now, where can the listeners and watchers find you?
Well, all over. They can just
Yeah.
put in my name, June Ahern. They go to my website to see what do I have to offer for this month. This month I happen to be doing all in-person things,
Okay.
events. The big Halloween event up here at Pacifica's historical castle. Do a
Oh,
whole storytelling in
that's
a
great.
play-like way. But see what I have to offer for that month. As I say, I'm not as consistent. So they could go on to my website, juneahern.com. I'm on Facebook, same thing, June Ahern, or Instagram. I just made it real simple for people.
Yeah.
June Ahern, or Ahern, author. You can find me anywhere.
Okay.
A lot of different places. I got off of Twitter. I didn't want
You
to be
got
a
off Twitter. Yeah, it's a little messy.
yeah.
Well, that's great talking to you and hearing what you're offering. And it sounds like you've got a really good grasp and method for people to attain their abilities and talents, specifically intuition, which is definitely a something that everybody should be working to. I feel like working to utilize and develop as another sense.
Yes, exactly. Because that's what we are putting into the energy every day. How do you want your day to be?
Yeah,
That's the intuitive message you send. And people have been my students, but also as people follow that, they realize what a very strong individual they actually are, how they
yeah,
can influence themselves, others, and be part of the world movement forward.
yeah. Personally, for themselves and for the world around them. Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And juneahern.com.
Yes.
Your link will be in the description. And of course, on social media, we'll have you tagged in the posts as well. And I really appreciate having you on today. And I look forward to maybe another interview in the future.
Yeah. We could talk about spirits and ghosts and how
Oh,
they,
yeah. I'd love
yeah.
that. That'd be great.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Take care.
Cheerio.
Bye bye.